Hi, my name is Shannon Butler. I'm the editor of the book All Is Calm, a Maine Christmas Reader, published by Islandport Press. All Is Calm is a collection of nonfiction stories from Mainers throughout the years of statehood, so it goes way back through the 1800s, all the way up through modern times, of how we spent Christmas in the state and our Decembers. And it's a great look at what's changed since the early days of Maine, and more importantly, what hasn't changed really throughout the years. Mainers tend to do things the same way over and over. So our connection to community and family and nature are themes that I saw across almost every essay as I was doing the research for this book. So really, not too much has changed, except now, of course, we have indoor heating and snow tires, which makes winter a lot easier to deal with. So today I'm going to be reading a little bit from All Is Calm, one of my favorite stories from the book. It's by an author, May Davidson. May Davidson was a writer from Mid-Coast, Maine, and she has a really fantastic memoir, Whatever It Takes, also by Islandport Press. And she was just a true Mainer. She was born and bred, lived here forever. And so she wrote this piece just for me for this book, which is really special, called Christmas in a One-Room School. And she's remembering when she was about 9 years old, which was 1934. So she's in a one-room schoolhouse up in the Mid-Coast in Bremen. And I just love this because I think all of us have these really fond memories of school leading up to Christmas, and that excitement, the kind of bottled joy that we're all just like quivering with anticipation. And May's essay really captures that feeling and what it was like in 1934. So I'll read a little bit of this essay. Christmas in a One-Room School by May B. Davidson, 1934. My school days began in a one-room school in Bremen. The year was 1934. One teacher, Miss Fawcett of Round Pond, taught all subjects to 8 grades and somehow provided us with a solid basic education. She covered all capacities, from general cleaning, filling and polishing oil wall lamps, keeping the wood stove going, and being second mother to 15 or 20 scholars, as we were called then. The number of scholars fluctuated over time, and there were only 12 during my years there. Our school bus was an old, tired, wood-sided beach wagon. Its glass windows had long since cracked and blown away. We were kept from freezing in the winter by a huge, thickly furred buffalo hide over our knees. The school did not have a well, so 2 older boys were required to bring pails of water from a neighbor's house about a quarter mile up the road. Gaiety along the way sometimes resulted in limited water arriving to fill the barrel-shaped crock with a small spigot at the bottom. The boys also brought in big chunks of wood from the entryway to pile around the stove. We created our own drinking cups by folding paper into the proper shape, but it was usually flimsy arithmetic paper that went soggy and leaked before we were finished drinking. We were happy on days when there was only blue-lined writing paper available to make cups because it held the water longer, giving us more time to waste. Also, the blue lines had a fascinating way of dissolving and running down the inside of the cup, staining the water with veils of color. When morning chores were done, we were seated. Our day began by saluting the flag, reciting the Lord's Prayer, and singing a hymn. Handwritten papers, which Miss Fawcett had prepared the evening before, and daily assignments for each grade were passed out. As the morning wore on, and the loud tick-tock of the wooden octagonal wall clock with its Roman numerals and shining pendulum seemed to be slowing down for us, the teacher's announcement, "You may lay your work aside for recess," re-energized us all and filled us with new life for the mid-morning and mid-afternoon. Noon hours seemed wonderfully long, and after the dinner pail contents were devoured, we built snow forts, had snowball battles, and went skating on nearby Weber Lake. When we returned to the afternoon's lessons, we were all deeply encrusted with snow, and little pills of ice rattled on our mittens. All removable clothing was spread on the wood stacked by the stove. The wettest of us were allowed to pull our desks into a circle around it. I can still smell the steaming wool of our hats and mittens. To begin our afternoon session, Miss Fawcett read aloud 2 chapters of an adventure story. This was the highlight of our day. Our energy had been used playing in the snow, and our interest in studies waned. There were 2 diversions, a bitterly cold visit to the outhouse, or the pleasure of watching the banner rats at play. These engaging creatures are not rats, but large and pretty mice, round-eared, soft-eyed, nearly blonde, and sport fluffy banners at the end of their tails. The mice lived in the entry's woodpile and had chewed small arches in the baseboard between entry and schoolroom. They came out to watch us, sitting up and grooming their white tummies. We learned to enjoy them silently because Miss Fawcett viewed them as wretched rodents and went after them with a broom if she divined the direction of our gaze. Another break we favored was the Ipana toothpaste salesman who came to the school and distributed small samples of the yellow tubes with red stripes that converged in the center. When his lecture about dental health was finished and he left, we squeezed the toothpaste out and ate it with gusto, since candy was not affordable in this era of the 1930s. It was vaguely sweet and minty. From November on, we looked forward eagerly to Christmas at school. We were in the Great Depression years, and Christmas was simple, if not stark, for all of us, but it did not affect our joy in anticipation of Christmas activities. As the time neared, first in the celebration was Expedition for a Christmas Tree. I particularly remember one Christmas when I was 9 years old. On the day chosen to cut the tree, one of the 8th grade boys brought an axe to school. Then our teacher led all 12 scholars off into the woods. There were miles of pine, spruce, and balsam forest growing just across the road from our school. Thirsting for adventure, we tramped along with Miss Fawcett, laughing, throwing snowballs, and searching for the perfect balsam tree. Sometimes we stopped to caress the moss on a ledge, or found some frozen red wintergreen berries, so flavorful. Once we were deeply into the woods, we were standing quietly, still for a short rest. A magnificent bull moose crossed ahead of us. Ignoring us, we watched his sleek, dark body silently disappear, his head bent back to maneuver his great antlers through the branches. His noble beauty was breathtaking. When we found a classic balsam fir, it was cut and the boys shouldered it back to the school. To decorate it, we cut and glued colorful paper chains and popped popcorn so we could string it on the tree. We brought out carefully stored ornaments to hang on the branches. A kind retired doctor who lived nearby provided a practical gift for each child to be placed under the tree, which stood from floor to ceiling, filling the room with its pungent fragrance, the essence of Christmas. Later in the season, Miss Fawcett gave us each a piece to learn and recite, and guided the older children in a production of a Christmas play. With practice, we performed it quite well, until, that is, our parents came to school to join our Christmas celebration. As they watched, stage fright took over, and we mumbled our lines or delivered them in rapid-fire staccato, lest our memory should fail before we finished. The youngest scholar was 5-year-old Annie, in the 1st grade. She was the last in a family of older brothers. Annie had a lisp, and she was squirming nervously in her first public appearance. As she struggled with her lisping recitation, she suddenly burst out, "Mama, my pants has fallen down!" Annie's mother went to the rescue, and Miss Fawcett hurried to the ancient organ to pump out a Christmas carol, hoping to distract from the scene. She succeeded because it was another amusing event. The music was jarringly discordant because of the banner rat's nest inside the organ, who had chewed some of the vital notes that were in their way. The entertainment ended joyfully. Each child's gift of a book and mittens from under the tree was excitedly opened, and apple cider with homemade donuts provided by Miss Fawcett were passed around. Thinking back to the simplicity and innocence of Christmas at the one-room school in Bremen still brings pangs of nostalgia each year as I remember the drenching scent of balsam, the warmth of the wood stove, the softness of kerosene lamplight. A beautiful time that has passed. I think of school children who may never have experienced the joy of following their teacher into the holiness of an old and deep evergreen forest, never listened to the silken silence of it, never seen a huge wild animal in his own forest setting, or bent to touch the velvet moss while searching for the perfect Christmas tree. Yes, in those early times, larger city schools may have offered cultural and sports advantages, but there was no ice skating to school if you lived near the big lake that ended at the schoolhouse. Teachers couldn't help children identify birds and wildflowers during the sweet time of spring. Scholars couldn't swing on slender birch branches bent by the previous winter's ice storm. We could catch up on culture, but the beauty of nature and the substantial, well-rounded education we received in our one-room schoolhouse was unique. Christmas times there are to be remembered like diamonds on the heart.